Can't remember a time in history like this one. The whole world has shifted. If you still have a job, you're doing it much differently, with a mask on your face or a child in your arms. Families are having to cope with lots of uncertainty and multitask every day. And students are learning to study in completely new ways. Politically, we see anger and angst in our streets. Even though everyone is affected, we don't have to let this time break us. In tough times, we always have a choice to shatter or bounce. Being resilient isn't about being lucky enough to avoid life's hardships. Resilience is finding a way to bounce back. It's a mindset that can adapt to the unfortunate and adjust to the unknown. Resilience is a stubborn commitment to thrive no matter what. Join Surprise Church for an important teaching series that will show you and your family how to be resilient at times like this.
Hey everybody, Pastor Matt Anderson here from Surprise Church Bismarck. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are watching from. If you're watching on Sunday morning on CSTV or online, you could be watching from Bismarck, Minot, Dickinson, anywhere in Western North Dakota, or online anywhere from around the world. Wherever you are, thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being a part of our extended family at Surprise. We're really glad you're here. You can, anytime during this video, we're going to post some, right below my hand here, we're going to post some text prompts, things that you can do to get it connected and involved. We don't want anybody to feel like, I'm watching this church on TV, but I don't feel like I'm a part of it. We want to do everything we can to help you feel like the part of the broader Surprise family. So you can text the word CONNECT to the number on your screen, 701-380-8210, and we'll send you a series of messages that see if you have any prayer requests or questions or check in with you. We even have a gift to send you wherever you are. If you're returning, you can text the word RECONNECT. You can text the word app if you want our Surprise app. You can get involved in a serving team or a community group by texting those keywords, and of course you can give by texting that word. So lots of opportunities to get involved, and we want to make sure that you're connected wherever you're watching from. So thanks again for joining us. You can also help us out by doing good right away, checking in on Facebook. If you check in on Facebook, you just start a post and hit check in, and then select Surprise Church Bismarck as the place you're checking into. You can just post the map of Surprise Church Bismarck that automatically comes up, or you can take a selfie and post a selfie of whoever you're hanging out with, watching this service with. Every 10 check-ins on our Surprise Church Bismarck Facebook page put a brick in building a school in an impoverished part of the country. We're partnering with a larger organization that takes check-ins, sends a donation. So thank you for your help checking in and doing good. Hey, we're in a series right now. Starting today, we're kicking off our fall series. Surprise Church in Bismarck is starting our fall schedule of 9:30 and 11 a.m. worship at Shiloh Christian School. If you're ever in town, please join us. But our series itself that we're starting is called Bounce. And it's about how to be resilient. Resilience is one of those words that you're hearing more and more of. You're almost hearing resilience as much as you're hearing the word social distancing and virtue signaling. It's everywhere. Resilience at a time like this, in the year 2020, is being taught at high schools, elementary schools. Psychologists and therapists are using it to try to teach people how to bounce back from difficult and challenging times. I used to be a basketball player, and I hate playing basketball if there's not enough air in the ball. This last year, my family and I were playing in our backyard, and they didn't know any different because they never really play basketball, but I'm used to a good, leather, pumped-up basketball. And when you drop a ball without air and it doesn't bounce back, it's frustrating. Same with life. If you go through a painful, stressful, challenging time, and you get through it feeling like it just took a notch out of who you are. You are scarred, you are broken, you are diminished, you lack hope, you lack confidence. That's not what God wants for you. What God wants from you is to be able to hit those bottoms and yet bounce up out of them as He walks you through a season of challenges and develops your character, helps you experience His mercy, and teaches you how to abide in significant relationships. This series is all about how do you be resilient. I don't even need to talk about COVID today. I don't even need to talk about the elections that are going on right now and the crazy news cycle that we're seeing. I don't even need to talk about the weather that we're going to be enduring in North Dakota over the next few months. I don't even need to talk about that because you probably have enough circumstances in your life where you would love to be able to bounce, where you would love to be able to grow through hardship and discover in yourself new potential that you didn't even know you had. So please join us over these next few weeks, in person or online or on TV, as we try to foster in you and in your family, in your household, the spirit of resilience. When I was a kid, I shouldn't say kid, when I was old enough to drive, one of the things I really struggled with was just paying attention at the wheel, which my parents would not have wanted to know at the time. I didn't tell them, but they kind of knew it about me anyway. I really struggled with driving. I would get kind of in one of those trances things, or I'd start thinking about something else. And again, this is the first couple of years of when I was driving. And as I would think about it, I would hear the car hit the shoulder of the road, and I'd kind of bounce out of it and panic, just like freaking out. And I'd heavy breathe, and I'd be grabbing the wheel, and I'd be centering myself on the road again. And I'm like, this cannot happen. And I remember praying feverishly whenever it did, like, God, don't let me do this anymore. Now, I hope that's never happened to you, and I hope it doesn't happen to you, but I bet you have experienced, either personally or someone in your life, I bet you have experienced someone not being present. One of my favorite movies is Back to the Future. How many Back to the Future likers out there? We found the DVD in a basement. We plugged it in and watched it with the kids. They absolutely loved it. There's something timeless about that movie. It's just, I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. You're going to love it. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Dr. Brown, who is the inventor of the time machine, he takes his dog Einstein and puts it in the time machine. And it's in this case, it's a car that drives 88 miles an hour and then travels through time. And him and Michael J. Fox's character, Marty, are watching the car drive at him, and it hits 88 miles per hour and disappears. And flames appear on the road right past them and disappear shortly behind them. And Michael J. Fox's character says, you killed the dog. You killed Einstein. And he said, no, I can tell you his molecular structure is fully intact. He says, well, where the heck are they? And Dr. Brown answers the question, that's not the right thing to ask. The appropriate question is, when are they? Because they're not in this moment anymore. They are in a different moment. And we have the potential as human beings to be physically present in this moment, but mentally we are traveling through time with Einstein, the dog, and Michael J. Fox in the DeLorean, either into the past or into the future. And when you do that, we're going to talk today about how you are far less resilient. You bounce far less easily. You have way less air to bounce when you are not fully present in the moment. I'm going to unpack a passage in Scripture today from Mark chapter 4. But before I do, I just want to emphasize one very important truth, that if you don't remember anything today, this would be one of the key things to write down if you're taking notes on the app, sermon notes guide, or the website, sermon notes. And that's this: the present can be nothing more than a means to the future. Have you ever found yourself wishing the present away? If you're young, you often live in the future and want to be older at least. And if you're older, you can often look back in the past and either long for days gone by or regret things that have happened. We can fret about the future. We can try to digest the past. We can micromanage the future and try to figure out how we can prevent something from happening or force something to happen. We can psychoanalyze the past. But to actually be here with what we can actually control now and enjoy the things we actually have now, deal with the challenges we actually can deal with now, that is a lost art. It's a lost art in an era where you could hit a cell phone button and travel through the wireless internet to a different place and time. At least it seems like. You can escape any moment. We are so used to not being present in the moment. So let's look at Mark 4 and see a situation where Jesus sort of deals with the issue of his disciples not fully being present in the moment because of something that terrified them. Oftentimes fear drags our minds into the future. That day, when evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side, that is, of a large lake. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him, so they had witnesses. They had people traveling at sea with them. A furious squall came up. It seems like whenever the Bible talks about Jesus' disciples in a boat, it's in the middle of a storm, because those were some noteworthy events that happened at sea with them. A furious squall came up, it says, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Anyone in the middle of a large body of water with waves coming in the boat does the math quickly and realizes that this is a life or death moment. Panic quickly sets in because the boat is becoming less buoyant. It has less air in it and more water. Boats full of water do not bounce unless they slowly and gently bounce off the bottom of the water, and they probably never ever come back up. So the disciples are quite afraid, right? They're peeing their togas at this moment. They're not feeling good about the situation. And so what happens when fear hits? I want you to watch what this passage says next, because what we're going to see is the disciples trying to micromanage the future, and Jesus 100% completely in the present. Look at this. Watch this. I circled Jesus in the present. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping in the cushion. Not exactly worried about the storm. Now look, I realize none of us are Jesus. But he is the one who made the heavens and the earth. He's the one who makes the wind and the waves. So obviously storms don't scare God. Your storms don't scare God. Your budget issues don't scare God. Your health issues don't scare God. Your relationship challenges don't scare God. Your age, your condition doesn't scare God. Your bad review at work or your hardship with a coworker doesn't scare God. Your struggles and stressors at school don't scare God. None of it does. He might seem like he's asleep at the stern. I don't know if Jesus was really asleep or pretending to be asleep, but clearly he was not dwelling on, oh my gosh, we're going to die in the future. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" If we drown is a statement about the future that's going to happen. They are sure. And they don't even ask him for help. They're simply saying, don't you care? You're sleeping. You should be freaking out like the rest of us. They were living in a negative future and trying to micromanage it, complain about it, tell Jesus that he should be doing the same thing. Jesus was fully present with complete awareness of God's power and control over his present circumstances. He was living in the past. They're living in the future. Question I have for you today is, where do you want to live? Where would you like to make your home? On the screen, I gave you 3 options of 3 homes you can live in. Number 1, you can live struggling in the past. You can look backwards at things you either miss or regret or that you're angry about. You can live in that past. There's a house with the word past spray painted above the door, and you can spend your mind time there all the time. You can live in anger, regret, or depression, thinking about what might have been, what could have been, what shouldn't have happened, what should have happened, what might have happened. Why did this happen? You can live in the past. Honestly, you can absolutely live in the past, but you cannot both live in the past and live in the present. Second place you could choose to live is you can panic towards the future. You could live trying to micromanage the future that hasn't happened yet. You could be sure of the bad things that have got to be happening and do whatever you can to either complain about it or try to prevent it or try to force it about. You can just spend your time like I sometimes did behind the wheel when I was driving and I was just trying to figure out what I was going to say and do in this circumstance, and I actually was endangered behind the wheel as a young first-time driver, and I had to realize if I'm not present, I'm putting my own life and someone else's life in jeopardy. If you're driving today and you're texting and you're looking around and not paying attention, it's the same thing as not being present mentally, spiritually. One of my favorite lines in the recent documentary that came out about Michael Jordan, The Last Dance. They were talking about how present he was. They were talking about how in the moment he lived. So that he would think about the future, certainly. He would plan for the future, set goals for the future, but he didn't live there. He was in the present as he did that. And someone once asked him, do you ever get nervous for the big shot? he looked at him like, what are you talking about? Why would I ever worry about a shot I haven't taken yet? And I heard that and I'm like, he's a different dude. He is so hardwired to be in the present moment, something that most of us have to really work at, that being in the future just really didn't even interest him. Worrying about failing in the future seemed silly to him. And so for many reasons, including that, he was an immeasurably successful athlete because of his ability to be here now. Finally, your choice of where to live can be to rest with Jesus in the present. Jesus was sleeping, I think, in a symbolic way in this passage. I know, and sometimes it might seem like he's sleeping in your problems, in your storms. The disciples thought the same way. But he was resting in the present. Because when you're living in the here and now, you're not responsible for the past, and you're not responsible for the future. You can't control either. They're not available to you. They're not accessible to you. There are only a limited set of things you can do right now. There are only a limited set of things you can experience right now. And that's all. The rest is up to God. Jesus hears them complaining, hears them panicking towards the future, and gets up. Verse 39, he got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. Most parents are like, man, I wish I could get my kids to listen to me the way the wind and the waves listen to Jesus, right? I wish I could go out in the wintertime and say, "Quiet, get warm." We're not God, though. That's up to God. Jesus is controlling what Jesus can control. If you and I are asleep in the front of that boat, we wake up, we might pick up a paddle or a life jacket. We might wave for other boats for help. We might do what we can do in the moment. But if you panic in a crisis, you're completely useless in the crisis. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" You see, for Jesus, faith has everything to do with being here right now. Question we could ask about this is, do I have enough faith to be present right now? Do I trust God? The God who said he died on a cross to redeem my past, to die for and forgive all the things that I've done, all the opportunities I've missed, all the wrongs done to me. He died to forgive it and redeem it. I don't have to live there anymore. Do I really believe that he has got my future under control? That the unknowns and the unknowable aspects of the future, I don't have to time travel with Michael J. Fox to live there and struggle there and panic there and control and micromanage that. I don't have to. I actually have faith that God is going to be there. That makes me present. That makes me able to be here and now with you. This, by the way, is one of the hardest battles of my life. I struggle to be present. And I do believe it's an element of faith, because I have to sometimes just stop and say, do I really trust God with the future? Or do I need to take it under my own control? Do I need to take it and do whatever I can with it, which is very, very little, if anything? Do I have enough faith to be present? There's another story. Again, I mentioned that Jesus is in a few different spots where he's in the boat with his disciples, and usually there's a weather issue involved, right? If they would have had a weather radio, they'd get that annoying honk, honk, now, and then the weather bulletin would come out saying, "You're in deep trouble, get off the water." But they didn't have that. They just got, the storms would come over the hill and just surprise them often on the Sea of Galilee. And here's a situation where the same thing happened, except for Jesus wasn't with them. So now he wasn't sleeping, he was actually absent, which again, oftentimes when we feel like panicking, we don't sense God's presence. He might seem like he's sleeping, or it might seem like he's absent. And that might contribute to our tendency to panic. Shortly before dawn, that means it's dark outside. It's been storming and they've been struggling against the storm, trying to not sink. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. Again, he's God, we're not. If he can walk on the lake, it's because he's God. When the disciples saw him, though, when they saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. Again, what do? They go to the future. This guy is going to do bad things for us. This thing must be a ghost. The ghost will kill us. They cry out in fear. They're not crying out in fear because there's a ghost right there. They're crying out in fear on the future of what a ghost would do to them. And that wasn't even a true fear. It wasn't a ghost. It was Jesus. So Jesus clarifies the identity question. He says, but Jesus said immediately to them, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Or if you translate that literally from the original language in Greek, it is I. It simply says, I am. Don't be afraid, because I am. Thousands of years earlier, when Moses was introduced to God, God introduced himself by saying, I am. God's very name conveys presence. God isn't just what he does. He's not things he is able to do. He is. God doesn't love you because of what you are able to do. He doesn't love you because of your looks and your potential, your gifts, your attributes, your record. He loves you because you are. And his very name talks of the importance of being in the present moment. God is the I am. Lord, if it's you, Peter said. Peter replied, tell me to come out to you on the water. I love that, man. Peter's just like, I want to do that. I want to be as present as you are, that I could literally stand on water molecules. Let's do this, Peter says. Come. Jesus said he's about to teach him a lesson about being present again on the water. Then Peter got down out of the boat and walked on the water and came toward Jesus. So far, so good. Looking at Jesus, present in the moment, not concerned about the future of the physics involved in this equation, because physically it's not possible to do what he's doing. But he's in the moment with Jesus, under Jesus' power, anything is possible. Verse 30, but when he starts to time travel to a different time. When he saw the wind, he was afraid, because the wind could hurt him and the waves could kill him. Even though he's physically, miraculously standing on the water right now, his mind looks, when he looks at the wind and waves, it travels into the future. And beginning to sink, so now his fears start to become realized and he really panics. He cried out, Lord, save me. We sink in the present when we live in the past or the future. You just sink. Only God can manage all time at once. God is somehow timeless and yet involved in our time. The great I am is the only being in the universe that can balance the present to the past and future. None of us have that ability. And so we sink right now when we try to dwell in the past or micromanage the future. We just can't do it. And like Peter, we start trying to live in a different era. We can't trust Jesus in the present time, and therefore we sink, because we cannot walk or stand unless we're here with him. Because it's the only place that we can be with him is by being present now. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Did you notice, by the way, that he didn't kill the storm right when he touched Peter's hand? That Peter is, blowing bubbles underneath the surface. He's got Jesus' hand. He's just waiting for the storm to go away. Didn't go away. Peter gets pulled up out of the water and stands next to Jesus, staring at the waves, bashing against him probably as they stand in the water, but Jesus didn't stop the storm. Jesus grabs Peter's hand and grabs his cloak and walks him through the waves, through the wind, to the boat. And only when they get into the boat with a conscious experience of walking with Jesus in the present moment through a storm, does then Jesus say, be quiet. The storm can stop now. And for the rest of Peter's life, he remembered what it felt like to be physically present, 100% present in the moment in a storm with a God who carried him through it. He remembered what it felt like to travel into the future of worry and to sink. And he never forgot the difference. And those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. I want to end today with 3 simple steps that you can take to get, instead of back to the future, like the movie, to get back to the present. 3 simple steps. The first step is grounding. If you want to hook some kind of electrical contraption up, you got to have a ground wire that kind of connects it to the ground. Otherwise, you can't run power through it. It's the same with us. God's power works in us when we're grounded in the present moment. So do something. If you want to pause after I give you this advice, even take your shoes and socks off. If you want to do it outside, you can. Put your feet firmly on the ground and feel the ground beneath your feet. Notice the firmness, how it supports your weight. And whatever you're sitting on, feel your weight. If you have your hands on a counter, feel the temperature and the texture of the counter. What does your skin feel right now? Is there a breeze? Is there a chill or a warmth in the air? What do you hear in the room around you? Furnace, air conditioner? Kids laughing, playing? What do you hear? What do you smell? Do you feel the air as you breathe in hitting the back of your throat? Is there a tension in your shoulders, in your body? Just take note right now of everything you feel. It may sound kind of silly or trivial, but you don't notice those things when you're time traveling. You notice them when you're trying to be present now. Secondly, so take some time. I had a friend who does this many times a day because he really struggles with anxiety. However often you need to take 5 minutes and just ground yourself, taking note of what you sense in the moment. And do this when you're reading scripture too, by the way. Get in this, like if you're trying to read about a story of Jesus, you got to be thinking about what's actually happening in the story, not what you got to do that day. So if you're in a really dramatic narrative, try to picture what's happening. Smell it. What are the smells and sounds and feels of that environment? If you're at a meal, what does it taste like? Be fully present as you're engaging scripture. Next, differentiating. It's a fancy word for simply letting yourself not be your thoughts and feelings. Oftentimes, we'll find our anxiety or depression rising up and down with our feelings. I want to invite you to do something else. I want to invite you just to sit there for a time and just think about your thoughts. Just kind of watch what you're thinking. And then even at some point, you'll even find yourself being able to just kind of stop thinking. Not to stop having a brain, but just to stop frantically popping from one subject to the next and one worry to the next and from the past to the future, from the past to the future, and actually be in the present. The idea that you are not your thoughts, good or bad. So step back from them and just watch them. Watch them like crawl around on the floor like a toddler. Because they are not you. Good feelings, bad feelings, indifferent, they're not you. Learn to separate from your feelings. Lastly, relationship. Hugely important is the power of relationships. At Surprise, we're kicking off our next week, our community groups, and I challenge you to be in one because community groups foster relationship. On the slide, you'll see a text to get involved in community groups where you can text a number just to let us know you're interested, and we'll help you find a group that works with your time schedule. We have groups that are virtual as well as in person. Here's a quick listing of the different groups that are involved where you can learn resilience by encouraging other people and being encouraged. We're going to talk more next week about the importance of connection in building resilience. But take a look at these groups. Surprise 101 is just, if you're not sure whatever else to group, it'll teach you the basics of what we believe at Surprise and what our mission is, what we're trying to do, and connect with some other great folks online. Text the number to get involved. Let us know which group you'd like to be in. And just remember, next Sunday, we're going to talk more about the power and importance of relationship. Thank you for joining us. God bless you. And we'll see you next week.